Hi, I'm Johnny from UltimatePaperMache.com, and this week I decided to do something that people have been asking me for a really long time. If you've seen any of my old videos, you've probably seen the hippo that was up on my wall. Here he is right there. He's been on my wall for a really long time, and a lot of people have asked me to make a pattern for that hippo because they'd like to have one too. As a matter of fact, totally by coincidence, 2 people this week have asked me for a hippo pattern. People wanted a hippo. So I decided it was finally time to go ahead and do it. This one is, the front of his face is made up of fairly large pieces, so it goes together pretty fast. But because of the size of the pieces, it's made out of cereal box cardboard, and it needs a lot of support. So you're going to see on the back of it, it looks a little weird. You don't have to make yours with green tape if you don't want to. This is really good masking tape. Frog tape is really good, but obviously it's green. You might not want that. But there's also a supporting piece on the inside, 2 supporting pieces that keep his nose, like the ridge of his nose right here, from flattening out when you put the paper mache on there. And I'll explain all of that in the instructions that come with the pattern. The ridges here, I'm going to make you sculpt those yourself. It probably would be possible to do that with cardboard, but it's so much easier to do it with just some crumpled up foil, so I'm going to make you do that part. But I do show you how to do that in the pattern, and I'm going to show you how to do that right here too. So stick around and you'll see how this goes, and then in the next video I'll go ahead and finish him up and paint him so he'll be black like a hippo. If you'd like to make a hippo, you can find the pattern out on my website. It's at ultimatepapermache.com/hippo pattern, and there is a small charge for it. You're going to be using 2 different kinds of cardboard. One of them is the cereal box cardboard. You'll need 3 boxes, just the front and backs, and that's for the front part of your hippo's face. For the back part, you're going to be using a corrugated box. You need to have at least 1 piece that's at least 12 inches wide. And there's also 2 back pieces that are too long to print on just 1 piece of copy paper. So you'll need to cut those patterns first before you stick them down. There's going to be little arrows on the line that you need to put together to make sure that that piece is going to be nice and straight. And then after it's stuck down, you can cut the cardboard out all in 1 piece, and that'll fit onto the back of your hippo. Now, once you have everything all cut out, of course, you get to start putting them together. That's the fun part. And a lot of the pieces do have darts. That's what they're called if you're making dressmaking patterns, so that's what I call it. So go ahead and pick up pattern piece number 1 and tape all the darts together except for the one that goes from the edge to the kind of central hole. That's going to be his nostril. So you want to leave that seam open first. Once you have the darts taped up together, then you'll be putting a little piece number 2 on there, and that kind of makes a mound for the nostril. You start it like I'm showing you here, and then just put a little piece of tape on there so that you can hold it down and know where it's going to stay. And then turn the piece over and start taping it all the way around the curve of that hole on piece number 1. It's easier to do from the back, and you just want to make sure that you take time, be really patient with it so that you can get all of the curves to match. Once that's done, then you can pull that 1 seam of piece number 1 that you didn't tape yet. You can pull it together, tape it on, and then the little darts on the nostril piece, in piece number 2, will just naturally come together, and you go ahead and tape those. Once you have 1 and 2 put together, go ahead and put number 3 and 4 together. They are going to be taped together in the front, but don't do that quite yet. We're going to put the bone that goes right down the center line of his muzzle on there first. That's piece number 5. The pointy part right at the bottom of that piece needs to line up right where I'm showing you here. There's a little corner, and that's where the tip at the bottom of piece 5 is going to go. Go ahead and tape that 1 edge of piece 5 to piece 1. Then put piece number 1 and piece number 3 together right at the bottom and get started at that point. Again, start it out with a piece of tape on the front and then flip it over so that you can tape it on the back. It's a lot easier to make those curves match if you're taping it from the back. Go all the way up the curve on piece number 1 and 3, and then keep going for that short curve on piece number 5. So now you'll end up with a piece that looks like this. Now, one thing to remember, every time you tape any of these seams together, you need to do it both on the inside and the outside. You want to make sure that every seam is reinforced with tape on both sides. Now, there's some long narrow pieces. They go from number 6 to number 15. They just go down the edges of the muzzle, and it's really obvious on the pattern how those go. It's actually going to create some ripples or ridges along the side of his muzzle. They're really easy to put on, and the pattern shows how to do that. The only interior darts are numbers 6 and 7, and those are also the only ones where you put the darts on so that there's a dip instead of a ridge that's created when the darts are pulled together, and that just gives a nice little dip right beside the upper part of his muzzle. The next pieces are the cheeks. Those go on really easy too, and once you have the cheeks on there, you're almost halfway done. So that really doesn't take much time. The eyepieces are a little bit smaller, so they're a little bit trickier. So go ahead and start out taping right at the corner, like I'm showing you here, and then flip it over and very patiently tape them together, matching all of those curves from the back. It's just a lot easier to do it that way. Once you have it all taped on, then you can go ahead and tape the corner of the eyes too. You do that with pieces 19 and 21 as well, and then you're ready to go ahead and put those eyes on your hippo. That's also just a teensy bit tricky because you're going to start out right at the corner like I'm showing you here, and then you're going to put the lower curve of the eyepiece on those long skinny pieces at the side of the muzzle. So you're going to actually be flattening out the ridges right at the very top. It's not hard to do, but you need to go slowly and tape each piece at a time. They kind of like to overlap a little bit if you're trying to go too fast, but if you're really patient and tape it slowly, it really isn't that difficult. And then keep going and complete the curve onto the cheek parts. And now all the hard parts are pretty much done. Pieces 22 and 23 go right above the eyepieces. Pieces number 24 and 25 go right at the top of piece number 5 and in between pieces number 22 and 23. So it kind of fills in his forehead. I guess you can call it a forehead. Why not? And then all the rest of the pieces, you've got 4 more, 26, 27, 28, and 29. Those complete the top of his head. We're not going to put his ears on quite yet, but you do need to put his eyes on right now. So go ahead and take a 1.5 inch foam ball and cut it in half. Then run a bead of hot glue right around the inside edges of the eyelids, which are pieces 20 and 21. Then immediately stick the curved edge of one of your balls right into that hot glue and turn it over really fast because you want to make sure that's in the right place, and you want to make sure that the hot glue is in good contact with the ball all the way around the edges. The other thing we want to do right now, because we also wouldn't be able to reach the back of his nostrils once the back pieces go on, so crumple up a couple of fairly small squares of aluminum foil. Crumple them lightly, but make sure that they're big enough so that they'll completely cover pieces 2 and 4. Those are the nostrils that you put on right at the very beginning of the whole process. Turn him over and put some hot glue right on the nostril pieces. Stick your foil balls down there and flip it over. And when the hot glue is cool enough so that you can mess around with it, go ahead and use your thumbs or some kind of rounded tool to push in on the foil. This is going to create a dip so that there isn't just a hole where the nostrils are. It's actually going to have a dip, which is going to look a lot nicer. I covered up the foil and the edges of the nostril right now with some masking tape But I'm going to make you do a little bit more sculpting on the nostril later, and that's also going to be covered up with masking tape. So if you want to skip that step right now, you can, and just go ahead and do all of it later. So now we're ready for the braces. There's a seam that you can see me pointing at right now, and that's where you need that very first brace, muzzle brace number 1 has to come to right to that point. Go ahead and tape it on with a piece of masking tape. Then you need to tape the other end in exactly the same place on the other side, but they're not going to come together easily. Once you do have them very firmly attached, there's still going to be a lot of stress on there because the patterns are going to want to flatten out again. But that's going to be taken care of with the next piece. That's the nice rounded one, the muzzle brace number 2. Once you have that taped on there, the whole piece really starts to feel a lot stronger. It's going to get even stronger once you attach your back pieces. Now the back piece, it's actually got those 2 arrows right at the top, and that's the perfect place to put a hole if you want to hang your hippo on the wall. You're also going to be turning this one over so you won't be able to see the actual pattern pieces, but you need to know where the center line is once you turn it over. So go ahead and find that the very top center line, like I'm showing you here. That way you'll know exactly where it goes when you start taping it on. You need that line to match up with the very top center seam on the front of your hippo. And then just tape it all the way around the edges, a little bit at a time on both sides is the easiest way to do it. You'll notice that I'm using clear tape on this, and then you'll probably notice that later I go along and retape it with masking tape. And I'm just doing that in order to protect the back piece to make sure that it doesn't get any water from the paper mache once I'm covering the front. So what I would suggest you do right now is, in order to save some clear tape, go ahead and use your masking tape now instead. The next piece that we're going to do before sculpting the eyes is the back piece number 3 that goes in under the big rounded parts of the front part of his muzzle. The long straight part will match up with the interior braces, and go ahead and tape that on there. The only other part that's going to actually meet the edges of the hippo pattern is right at the very front corner. So go ahead and put a piece of tape there to hold it on. The muzzle hasn't got a flat surface that you can see from the front. So obviously the brace itself, which is flat, is going to be down below that. Just go ahead and tape that on really well. Now we're going to turn it over now. There's one more back piece, but we're not going to put that on quite yet, because if you do, you wouldn't be able to reach in behind everything and do the final sculpting with your foil on the eyes. But we can put the ears on now, and you can see how those go because there's those dotted lines. Just put the ears right there. We want to make them look fat with some foil. So put some hot glue on there and put some very loosely crumpled pieces of foil right around the edges, on the inside edges of the ears, and make sure that that foil is also attached with the hot glue to the face patterns as well, and that really does help the ears be on there really strongly. The eye wrinkles are all done with lightly crumpled noodles of foil. I'm using hot glue to put them on. Kind of round it out with your fingers or with a smooth tool so that you don't have any sharp points poking up on the foil. The pattern pieces themselves will kind of help you position those if you'd like to put your wrinkles on exactly the same way I did. I'm also putting a very small noodle of foil around the nostrils, and then I covered all of the foil with masking tape. And that helps the paper mache to stick to it. Now that we have the eyes and nostrils and the ears all done, we can go back and finish that one final back piece. That goes on really easy. The curved edges, they will not meet the actual edges of the front piece because, you know, our hippo is not flat. So go ahead and tape those on like I'm showing you here. At that point, you're actually ready to start working with your paper mache. I used brown paper. I just, for no apparent reason, I used 2 different colors of brown paper. It actually looks pretty cool when it's all done. I started out on the eyes because that's the hardest part to do, and even if you want to use paper mache clay instead of paper strips and paste for everything else on your hippo, I very strongly recommend that you put paper strips and paste over the eyes and those eye wrinkles. I might go back over the wrinkles with a really thin layer of the paper mache clay just to smooth out the little parts of the paper mache that don't come out quite even. You can see here that I did not put any paper mache on the back except for that really narrow strip of masking tape. So that's how to get him to this point. And in the next video, I'm going to show you how I finish him up. There's several different options that you could do. As a matter of fact, if I had used just one color of paper, I might be really tempted to just leave them like this. But there's other options too, and I haven't decided which one I'm going to do. I'll tell you about them in the next video. So watch for that, and in the meantime, go make something. And then come visit me, ultimatepapermache.com.